So today's short presentation is called What is Clay? And it's just going to give you a brief overview of what is clay, where it comes from, and the different stages of clay that you're going to be working with. So clay is a naturally occurring material. It's composed of primarily fine-grained minerals, which show plasticity. And plasticity basically means the quality of being easily shaped, meaning that the material has water mixed into it, and that creates a soft, moldable material. This material, when hardened and dried, can be fired in a special oven at a high heat, and it makes it a very solid and durable material. Clay deposits are mostly composed of clay minerals. The main one that you will hear me talk about is silica. Silica in its wet form is perfectly safe, but in its dry, powdered form, it can be very dangerous to breathe. So we will talk about clay safety once you guys start working with the clay. Clay minerals are typically formed over long periods of time by gradual weathering of rocks. And it could take place over thousands, if not millions of years. There are different types of clay called clay bodies. Earthenware, stoneware, and porcelain are some of the common names you'll hear, and we work with earthenware clay in our class. We know from the study of ancient history, art, and archaeology that people made clay sculptures and functional pottery wherever they lived, so it makes sense to understand that natural clay is readily available all over the world. Because they are the smallest particles of soil, clay particles stay suspended in water longer than sand or silt. And this tendency to stay suspended allows the particles to settle slowly in calm waters, and clay then forms in beds where water sat still for some time in the distant past. So this could be floodplains of rivers, streams, or the bottoms of lakes, seas, and ponds. And this is true even long after the water is gone. The clay will remain where it is left behind. And you can see this woman here picking up what's called a slake of dried clay from what looks like either a river or a lake bed. There are 5 stages of clay that we're going to review right now. The first stage is plastic. Plastic clay can easily be worked with. It's when it's soft and mushy and wet. It's really the most fun stage of clay to work with. After the clay dries a bit, it becomes leather hard. And this is when it's great to carve or cut into the clay or attach separate pieces. So this mug is an example. The mug was made and then the handle was made separately, and both got leather hard, which meant they were a little bit stiff and held their shape, and then they were attached. So plastic and leather hard are the 2 stages that you're going to be using most of the time to make your projects. Once you're done with your projects, you're going to let them completely dry out, and they will then be called greenware, or also known as bone dry. At this stage, the clay cannot be reshaped. In other words, you can't sculpt anymore or attach anything more to it. You can, however, if you don't like your project or you want to start over again, take the clay and put it in a cup or a bucket of water, and it will eventually get back to its plastic shape, and that's called recycling the clay. But at this stage, you can't actually attach anything to it. It's too hard. You can carve into it, but it's very, very delicate and can crack easily. Once all the moisture inside the clay has evaporated, the clay sculptures are ready to be fired in the kiln. And the kiln is the special oven that we use, and it brings the clay to the bisque stage. So when clay has been fired once in the kiln, it goes through this process called vitrification, meaning that it's transformed by heat, very high heat, into a hard substance. And what essentially happens is millions of small individual minerals of clay begin to crystallize, meaning they melt and fuse together to create one solid, durable piece. So your clay goes from being, super soft to stiff to hard and fragile, and then it gets fired in the kiln and becomes hard and much more durable. The quantity of silica in the clay, as well as the temperature of the kiln, will determine how porous the surface of the clay is. And we'll talk about that more when you actually see your pieces come out of the kiln. Clay that comes out of the kiln is referred to bisque. It's referred to as bisque or bisqueware, or the more popular name you'll hear me say is ceramic. At this point, your ceramic pieces are ready to be glazed or painted. There's different types of kilns. I use an electric kiln. You'll get to see it when you come to class. It is a sort of a modern day kiln, but these brick-fired kilns are also used. They could be gas-powered. Here's another one over here. It's either electric or gas-powered. gas powered, or some brick kilns are even fired by, simply stoking it with lots of wood. And in ancient times, before kilns were built, people would simply make big fire pits and they would fire their greenware. Glaze is simply liquid glass. You can call a piece that has been glazed glazeware. After clay has been bisque fired, it can be dipped in glaze, or glaze can be brushed on with a paintbrush. And then the clay piece, or which we now call ceramic, is fired again at a higher temperature to make the glaze permanent like glass. The glass seals the surface of the clay, making it safe to drink or eat out of.